It's Thursday, 11 o'clock. It's time for this week's Watch Drop. I feel like at the moment I'm going through a bit of an existential crisis. Why? Well, I recently bought a 2000 BMW E39 M5. I've come to the conclusion that the noughties is actually a fantastic period of engineering and design. I've had a lot of cars in my time, and that car just feels like perfection. I don't know if it's been improved from that point on. Why am I talking about cars? Well, on the table today, we've got a couple of Pateks from around that time frame where, again, I think they nailed the brief perfectly. But let's dive into it and we'll see if you agree with me. And we'll compare and contrast these watches with some of the more modern references, and we'll see whether Patek's been improving or sustaining or maybe getting worse. We'll see. The first Patek we're going to talk about, strangely, has become one of my grails, and I never thought I'd say that. This is a reference 5070P. Now, why have I changed my mind on this? Well, firstly, I think I've learned that you shouldn't judge a watch without actually seeing it and wearing it on wrist. That's a real lesson that I've learned over the years of being here and getting to try on so many watches. Really getting hands-on has changed my mind many times before. And in this instance, it's not only taken a watch that I wasn't particularly fond of to a watch that I really like, but it's actually made me realise that this is an all-time grail for me. The reference 5070 is looked down on many people because of the case size. It's actually misquoted as a 42mm. It's much more like a 41. That's still pretty big for me and for most people. But when you get this watch on wrist, it doesn't feel like a 41 or a 42mm watch. And many Patek Calatravas actually have the opposite effect. It's a strange thing. And I think it's partly to do with the fact that the case is this beautiful sort of Art Deco stepped case. The dial is symmetrical, which is stunning. It's got applied indices that just contrast against that lovely sort of almost an ice blue. All in all, it sort of comes together as this watch that fascinates me. It's aesthetically, I think, beautiful. And I don't say that lightly. I've seen a lot of Pateks, and this one just talks to me. I don't know why. It's a wonderful thing. It's known to be a very collectible reference. These are quite valuable, certainly much more valuable than the 5170 because it's an earlier reference. It's the last use of the Lemania-based 2310 caliber. And a lot of people actually think that this caliber is too small for a watch this size, but I disagree. I actually quite like, yes, it's small in the case back, I get that, but I really like that it harks back to a time that Patek used EBOSH movements rather than developing everything in-house. This watch, I think, was created for aesthetics, and I love it for that. All-time grail, genuinely speaking, it's fantastic. So to round off on the Patek 5070, that's a watch that was created in the time period between 2008 to 2010. Many people think that they created about 500 watches during that time. So production numbers were much, much lower. And the same is true for the next watch, which is the Aquanaut 5066/1A. If you're a reference nerd, then you'll know that a 1A designation relates to the fact that this is on a bracelet. And it's one of the things that I weirdly like about this. I know I'm on my own at this point. It's a bit of a, I can't open it. That's one thing. It doesn't really work very well as a bracelet, but without getting it on wrist. The links on this bracelet are very, very big. So you find that as it wraps around your wrist, it's kind of all stepped and Interesting. It's highly polished everywhere apart from the links, the side of the links. I'm probably alone on this, and for a long time I've seen them on bracelets and I think, God, why don't you just take them off and put them on a rubber strap so that you've got that continuation of the grenade sort of dial aesthetic. But I like it on bracelet. If this was mine, and goodness knows it might be because I love it, I would keep it on bracelet. I've got to talk about this dial because they really leaned into that grenade finish. There's much more of a sense of relief in the dial, sort of a height, a depth to it, which I think is lost, and probably deliberately so, on the later reference 5167, which we'll go into. I love the fact that this is an early 5066, so it has a tritium dial and tritium hands, and because time has passed and oxidation has set in, the tritium has turned to this beautifully mustard-esque yellowy orange. I really like that. It just makes it feel like a 25-year-old watch that's lived a life but actually grown more and more handsome through that time. It reminds me of my it reminds me of my BMW M5. Ridiculous. That's a ridiculous statement. So this watch is very similarly aged to my BMW. This is a 2001. And I think much like my BMW, there's an aesthetic there that possibly at the time was looked on as okay, not great, but right now it's coming into its own and I'm here for it. As I say, it might just be me, but let me know in the comments if you agree. I think now's the time for that 2000s era of design to come back. So I'm going to leap forward 20 years, just 20 years, and talk about some modern references from Patek. And it makes sense that I talk about the 5167A. This is the most modern Aquanaut. It's a case size of 40 millimeters, so it's a much, much bigger watch. And it wears it. It wears actually slightly larger because the bracelet or rubber strap, I think they call it a bracelet, protrudes quite a lot. It's clear that so much of the design language from the original Aquanaut has been sort of distilled, pared back a little bit, but it's still there. You've got that sort of Nautilus-esque bezel to it, brush bezel, but you do have that, I'm calling it grenade. I think a lot of people do call it that, but until you see it, it's very difficult to see why people refer to it as a grenade finish. This one is much flatter. There's less depth to it than in the original. It probably helps legibility, but you don't get quite as much of a reflection of light on it. I think a lot of people would agree that modern design tastes are more minimalist, and this reference has definitely followed that trend. It feels lighter, probably because it's not on a bracelet, but it's definitely still thin and elegant and comfortable. And for that reason, it's an excellent summer watch. It really, really is. I don't know which I prefer, this one or the other one, but I don't think you can go too far wrong with either of them, to be honest. Back to dress watches. Going to talk about the reference 6119G. It's one of the latest Calatravas. So we've talked a lot about Patek Calatravas, and if you click there, I'm sure someone can put a link to the video that we talked about all the different series of them. I like this modern version. I really do. Why do I like it? Well, it's got a clou de Paris or a hobnail bezel, but it's got this beautiful brushed finish, vertically brushed finish that gives you so much character to the dial. Otherwise, it's quite monolithic, but it reflects light so beautifully. It really makes the subdial stand out, which is a different finish to the main dial itself. But one thing you notice is that modern Calatravas do, as I say, wear much larger. This is a 40mm watch, I think. And when you put it on wrist, it wears like a modern watch. I mean, of course, it is a modern watch, but it wears much larger than the dimensions would make you think it does. It is the entryway, I think, into Patek. And it's really important, I think, for brands to make sure that their entry point models are so good that it brings people into the brand. And you sort of start with your time-only Calatrava and then you work your way up to the grand complications. And this watch does brilliantly at that. It's a really great watch, and now that they're trading somewhat under list price, I think it's a brilliant time to pick it up. What a watch. Really nice thing. We're going to move on now to a couple of watches that are in the modern current catalogue from Patek, and they're world timers. So that is to say that the complication, or the main complication on these watches, is a multi-time zone complication that is so brilliantly thought out. It's been in use by Patek for 80 years or something like that, because it's just unbeatable. The first watch that I'm going to talk about is the 5935A. So that's a stainless steel watch, and it has a salmon dial. Steel watches with salmon dials stand out as two characteristics that are used only in special watches. This is the reference 5935. It's a world time, but it's combined with a chronograph function. So if you're someone that enjoys that complication, you're a sporty type person, you'll enjoy having that stopwatch function when you're traveling. It's a really nice use of indices and subdials and a combination of all of those things that make the dial so interesting to look at. And the 5935 also has in the center of the dial what Patek referred to as a carbon finish. It's like a sort of carbon fiber weave. I mean, they're not. It's a, I think, stamped guilloche pattern. And again, that adds to the sort of sportiness of this watch. But suffice to say, it's a watch that has so many different finishes on the dial and interesting indices and lettering, and the handset's really interesting. It's a really lovely thing. I love it. And I think it does stand the test of time. The last Patek I'm going to talk about flows on quite nicely from the 5935. It's the reference 5330G. What's instantly noticeable about this watch is that it's precious metal. You pick it up, you feel the heft of the white gold. This is right bang up to date with Patek's current design language. They've started using these denim straps, and I mean, it's not for everyone. It's really not. But let's not talk about the strap. Let's talk about the watch itself. This is a world time, and the first time actually that Patek have combined a date function with a world time. And you would have thought that had been done for many times before. It's an obvious complication to include, but actually no. And it's a peripheral date, so you've got this really long hand that runs to the very outside of the case and sort of tracks the date around. Part of what I like about that is that you have this carbon finish in the middle, much like the 5935. Then you go on to the time zone, and then again it steps out and you have this white with blue letters date disc. And it's really, really amazing, actually. I love the fact that you sort of work your way towards the outside of the case, and it's still keeping you interested. When I think about these two world time references that we've got this week, I'm reminded how useful the world time complication really is. I've experienced traveling with it a few times now, and it really is the perfect travel companion. It's interesting that this week we also have a Rolex Pepsi GMT, actually in white gold with a blue dial. And there was a time when this was my go-to travel watch, because GMT complications are just as useful, almost as useful as a world time complication. But if you're in the market for something like this, it's definitely worth taking a little bit of time to look into the world time complications from Patek, particularly if you're going for a precious metal Rolex and you're up in that sphere of expenditure. Then I think you'll be surprised that Patek's world time is actually just as good, if not better, a travel companion as the iconic Rolex GMT. So that's this week's drop, and actually our last drop in this building. You can probably tell that the lamp has gone and we're starting to move into our new HQ over in Farringdon. More details on that to follow. But do hit the website, check out this week's drop. Over 70 watches hitting the site, and a brilliant mix of not just Pateks, but Langers and JLCs and so much to see. Hit the website, check it out, and I'll see you from Farringdon next week. Did I mention that I've got a new BMW?